All right, welcome to another episode of the Couch Coaches podcast, and Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you had a great Christmas and holidays and New Year's, and it's the best time of the year. Like, I love Christmas, I love December, but January is, I don't make any plans. People call to do stuff on the weekends. I say, I'm busy. I'm not really busy. I'm watching football, and college football kind of wrapped up. It's the big question marks yesterday on New Year's Day, and looking forward to these to the championship game. I was kind of blown away with how tight the games were. You always hope the games are going to be that good, but then you get into the situations where, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and a lot of times you have blowouts. You have situations kind of like the Georgia FSU game, and we didn't have that at all. We had two very, very tight games, for extremely deserving teams to be in the playoffs, and I'm very looking forward to Monday. But let's kind of recap on the games yesterday. We'll go in order. So starting with Bama and Michigan, Deacon Greg, thoughts on Bama and Michigan?
Like you said, it was a great game. It was a battle of wills. The game was won in the trenches. In the offensive defensive line. A lot of people saying that that Bama shouldn't have been in there. I think that the coaches, the commission, whoever, how they choose the teams, I think they got it right. I think they got them. I think they even got the order right. That the one, the seedings were all right, and that was a great game. Hats off to Michigan. They came in there. They won that game. There was a battle, but they were the better team. They fought it in the trenches, and they were more physical and especially at key points of the game. Bama never could get a running game established. I always say, Bama used to have like at least 3 starting running backs, sitting on the bench, so they could rotate in. They don't have that anymore. With the transfer portal and colleges, guys are just, everybody's catching up with everyone. So it really boils down to coaching. And a lot of the pundits today said that Saban got out coached. So and that could be, we've been talking about how great a coach he is, but he always had a stacked team. So we'll see going forward.
Brother Bill, thoughts on that first game yesterday?
Yeah, I expected Alabama to win because, to Deacon Hill's point, in past, the Alabama teams have typically been more physical than whoever they played in the playoffs. And this was the first time I've seen them be out physical, not just at the line of scrimmage, but even at the linebacker area. When you look at what Michigan was able to do in that last drive, still being able to run the ball, that's typically been uncharacteristic of a Michigan team to be able to come back in a big game. They've typically been, good front runners. When they've beaten Ohio State in the past, they've typically had the lead late, have been able to hold on. And this was the first time I can recall in a long time to see them down and needing a touchdown, not just a field goal, but actually a touchdown, just be able to get it into overtime. I mean, that impressed me. The other thing that surprised me, and the broadcast even called it, is when they went for it deep in their end on that 4th down and 2, knowing that was just basically, one play to execute to decide the game, as opposed to punting it and hoping they get the ball back using timeouts. Give, Jim Harbaugh credit. You can say what you want about him with all the, issues they need to deal with, with the team and the scandal, but he rolled the dice and put it in the hands of his team, and the team got it done. And so you have to take your hats off to them. And then, unfortunately for Alabama, the way the game ended, that was a head scratcher to me. We talked about it, in our chat, that running play, a quarterback draw. I just did not know. I could not understand that call at all. And it was a tough way for them to lose the game. That's all. So Michigan was the more deserving team because they fought for the 60 minutes and then the overtime to get it done.
Yeah, I was with the way that the Michigan's defensive line was able to get in on Alabama's offensive line. I can't believe the game was really that close. I can't believe Michigan had to, because they was just, when they were doing those pass plays at the beginning, even at the very beginning of the game, it's like they are blowing this line up. I'm like, they're not going to get anything done. And to have them be able to drive, and then on the flip side, to have them be able to drive, like Saban doesn't run the offense. He's the head coach. He's picking the OC, and I'm sure there's some collaboration on what they're calling and their strategies and everything. But to have his defense just give up booty, like the one time in the game where they need to just lock it in, and those big plays, those fourth down plays, it was like the Eagles and Chiefs last year when they're in the red zone, like on the 5-yard line, and they run this play, and a dude is by himself on one end of the field, and the whole defense is going to the other side. That's what it reminded me of. It was like they need two. Okay, we got to stop them, and it was like it wasn't even two. What did he get, like 30 yards on that play? Just with there was nobody there, so their defense was completely caught off guard with what they were running, and to me, that's a bigger disappointment in looking at Saban than those just god awful play calls in overtime, like running running anything on the 7-yard line when you have to get in the. Oh my God, I was like unbelievable. And one saving grace for the play call, even though I think the play call was awful, is they said that that he didn't follow the lead he was supposed to follow. Like something opened up on one of the sides, and I was listening to it. It wasn't a visual. Something opened up, and he didn't pick it. He just went. He went to the pile.
I heard
I
that.
didn't see anything.
First, it was a low snap. The snap was low, and they said that one of the guys, it was one block that was missed. If that one tackle or guard would have made the block, then he could have got through. But that's why they try to justify that play. It was just one block that was missed. So yeah, but no, that play call was crazy. That was crazy.
It was baffling. There was one other one. I don't remember if it was Bama or Michigan, but they do it's like 4th down or 3rd down and 2, and they have to get it, and they do the play where it's like where it's like a halfback draw where they hand it to him and then he waits to see where the hole is, and there's no hole. Everybody just piles in on him. It's like, bro, it's
the other thing that surprised me, although I did see in some of the regular season games, Michigan quarterback JJ, I can't recall his last name. The one play on the drive for them to tie the game at the end, where he hit the receiver, and the ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
The receiver caught it. Yes. I mean, it could have been easily intercepted, because if the receiver doesn't make that catch, you had two DBs right there waiting, and then that would have been the ball game. So they always say football is a game of inches. Perfect example. I mean, that play. So Michigan made all the plays they needed to make. The play calling, and to your point, Joe, and then the execution down the stretch was impressive. If they do that against Washington, if they come prepared, I could see Michigan win the game. I mean, I know we'll talk about that once we talk about the second game, but yeah, I mean, like I said, they got it done.
And that play too, he had a lot of zip on that ball, and it slowed it down. So the wide receiver gets it, and the DBs go right by him, so he's able to like stop to come back to the ball, and that opened up the lane for him to get that. That whole thing was like, because you always see like a deflected pass, and the wide receiver like loses, because he's going in one line, and it deflects someplace else. That could not have worked out better for him. That's like when they talk about like the sports gods. That's like it's like they just handed it to him. The DBs just keep going, and he just turns around and cut. Oh, that was a wild game. Turning to the other game, Texas and Washington, and I did with Brother James getting called away tonight. I did try to get Brother Chris to jump on, because he is a massive UW fan, and he was the first person besides my brother-in-law that I texted last night when that game went final. Texas UW, massive game. Brother Bill, I'm going to stick with you. Thoughts on the game?
I expected Washington to win, but I wasn't sure whether or not, what they were going to be able to do defensively. I mean, considering that Nix, what's his name, Bo Nix Jr., he was the Heisman runner-up. I didn't see any tape from the guy who won the Heisman, but I'm thinking to myself, I mean, the way this guy balled in this game and he was the runner-up.
Oh, how did he not?
I mean, Penix, thank you. Penix Jr., thank you. Like, how was Penix Jr. the runner-up? I mean, if he's been doing this all season, which, I mean, I know he has been, I mean, that was impressive. He lit it up last night when he had to. And Washington really didn't have a running game. I mean, that was the majority of what they did offensively was passing the ball. And they found the most creative way to almost give the game away at the end when they tried to run the ball instead of just kneeling it down and just running the clock down. I'm thinking to myself, if Texas, marches down the field and wins this game, that's going to be the talk of the whole offseason.
And it looked like they were going to also.
Yes.
I'm watching. Oh, I felt so bad for my brother-in-law that last.
Yeah.
They're right there. I'm like, this. Please don't tell me they're gonna pull this out at the end. Deacon Hill, thoughts on the game?
Washington held true to form. That's been their MO the whole season. Every Sunday I come to church and talk with Chris. I'm like, dude, your team just scares me. I don't know how they pull these games out, but they play that way the whole season. You just know they're going to lose. And like you said, with the quarterback, he a lefty too, and he was throwing the ball. Texas, I kind of thought Texas was the more physical team. I thought they were going to win. I thought Texas, because Washington been scaring me all year. I was pulling for Washington because we got Chris at our church, and then and Washington is closer to Texas to us. So I was pulling, and Pac-12, and I was going for them, but they scared me the whole time, and they held true to form. They don't make nothing easy all the way down. So it was a great game and a great win for Washington. Their defensive line was impressive. They were getting some pressure in there. They got one good pass rusher. That guy gets in there and was causing havoc. So yeah, their defensive line was saving them a lot, and the quarterback throwing that ball. So there's not going to be an easy out for Michigan. So it's going to be a great national championship game.
Yeah, I feel like with their receivers, I feel like they're at least with quarterback and wide receivers, I feel like they're as dangerous as LSU was a couple years ago with Burrow and Chase and those guys. Those wide receivers, he's throwing dimes to those guys, but some of those passes they're catching with the DB all over them, those are not easy, and they're pulling everything down.
What gets me though, one thing, Joe, real quick, is these DBs these days, they don't never look back. How come they just run with the receiver and the ball comes right down? Whatever happened to it used to be when the receiver looks back, you look back, just a glance or something to see if the ball's coming. These guys just run straight ahead. Ball, like you said, the ball's dropping right in there.
Well, and I feel like that's gonna bite them when they go pro, because at least in college, if the ball's short and the receiver comes back, it's 10, 15 yards or whatever. In the pros, that is going to kill you. When the wide receiver has to come back to get you. So Deacon Hill, I'm gonna stick with you. Thoughts on next week's game? Who Michigan or UW?
Oh, you know what? I'll say this. If Michigan, if Washington can establish any kind of a running game, they have to get a little bit more physical than they did. But just like we were talking in our chat earlier, that it can't be a track meet. I don't think Michigan can keep up with them if it comes into a track meet. The only chance that Michigan has is they have to just turn it into a dogfight and win in the trenches and make Washington have to try to out muscle them or something like that. But I'm not. But you know what? I'm sticking with Chris. I'm going with you, Chris. I'm going with Washington.
Are you going Huskies? Brother Bill, who do you think? And it could be a thing. Who do you think is going to get it? Who do you want to get it? It could be two different things also.
Yeah, I don't have. I think from a sheer sports story, other than the Michigan scandal, it would be a good story for sports, right? For a storied team like Michigan, their history. How about for an ex-player to win a championship for their alma mater? Like I said, it would be a good sports story. But then the other side of that is, will the championship be tainted because of all the allegations? So that's something that I have to consider too. I don't have a rooting interest either way, but from a sheer sports a fan standpoint, it would be great for a school like Washington as well, not just Pac-12, but because it's not often that a team west of the Mississippi plays this well for this long, other than USC. I mean, there have only been a handful of teams west of the Mississippi that get a whole lot of national press when it comes time to playoffs, late in the season. It's almost always SEC, Big 10, Big 12. That's just the way it is historically. ACC kind of gets some back in the Florida State and Florida days. But so I say all that to say, if I was a betting man, I would think from a style standpoint that Michigan can find a way to get it done, because I think they can do more offensively than Washington can. And Washington is more one-dimensional. But the question is going to be Michigan's defense, if they can make Washington work for their points. If there's turnovers, then it's going to be anybody's game anyways, because both teams have shown that in big moments they can make either the mental mistake or the actual mistake. Michigan, they had I think a turnover early in that game. So I expect it to be a close game. I don't expect it to be a shootout. I could see it being in the 20s. And last possession, I think Washington last possession to win it, I would give them a better shot at pulling it out than I would Michigan.
So you're going Washington.
Who do I think is going to win?
Yeah.
I think Michigan will win. Like I said, only because I think they can do more offensively. You know what their running game is. The question is going to be whether or not their defense. I mean, if Washington is lighting them up early, then it could be a runaway game like TCU. But I don't expect that to happen. I expect it to be close.
Okay. Yeah, I was just watching that line last night going, I don't know. And knowing that Washington doesn't have a great running game, knowing that pass plays have to have some time to develop, I was just kind of going, man, I don't know how in the world Washington's going to be able to even have the time to get the ball off. But then I remembered, and I wish I had thought about this, because I was so surprised Alabama was getting blown up at the line, but then Texas did the same thing to them when they played them in Bama this year. They were more physical. Their lines were, Texas had control of the lines, and I went, UW just moved the ball very, very well against a team that blew up Alabama. And so their defensive line is going to be, maybe it's not the same as Michigan, but it's in the same ballpark. And I thought if they could do that against Texas, they could probably do that against Michigan. Granted, I'm sure Michigan's DBs are better than Texas. Michigan's defense is better coached, I think, overall. They were on top of it. They had clean tackles. They looked really good last night. But I think with that, I think Penix is unique, and those wide receivers are unique. And I think Washington is a very, very, very well coached team. And if UW doesn't win this year with Penix leaving, this coach is gone. Whatever the big job is that opens up, this dude's out of there. I don't know where that is, but he's not going to stay at UW. He's going to be going someplace big. Maybe Texas when they let Sark go. But I'm going UW because they played Texas. Texas has a very tough defense. But I'm going UW. I'm going UW with Chris. We're going Chris and my brother-in-law. I think that offense, and I think the coach will figure out something to start, because McCarthy's good. He's not great. When Harbaugh comes out and says he's the best quarterback Michigan's ever had, it's like, he might be, but he's not. Like, to me, I don't see anything where he's going to go into the next level and be a killer. I think he's okay. Yeah,
and I would think because McCarthy doesn't have to be great for Michigan to win, Penix does have to be great for Washington. I mean, he's the offense, right? And so a good defense, and we've seen it both in college and the pros. When a team is one-dimensional and there's the one guy you have to stop, now it's easier said than done. I mean, when you got he's got that Superman cape. I mean, we saw it in action yesterday. So if he plays Monday like he did last night, then that might be enough for Washington. But like I said, I would be surprised if Michigan lets him throw for 400 plus yards. So we'll see.
Yeah, that would be something. And I still think there's something with Harbaugh in big games. I know he just beat Saban. This is one of the worst Bama teams that Saban's had in the last 10 years. It was still close. There's something with Harbaugh. Until he does it, I can't see it. Yeah. I just have a hard time with it because I've seen him coach big games and he poops a lot.
I think if he trusts his coordinators on both offense and defense and just let focus on coaching, then they have a shot. I mean, at this state, national championship games, the head coach, situationally, sure, there might be some decisions to make, but you put games like this in the hands of your coordinators. They've been doing it all season. At least they should.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so just real quick, we have to address it because it was such a huge deal when they announced the top 4 teams. FSU. They had an opportunity to come out and prove everybody wrong, prove the committee wrong, and take it to Georgia, and they laid the biggest egg you could possibly. I mean, it looked like they didn't want to be there. They had all these opt-outs. They had all these. I mean, they could not have shown worse and given everybody all the reason in the world to be happy they weren't in the final. Thank goodness this team was not in the Final Four, because they got absolutely annihilated. And I don't know how anybody can look at that team and be like, oh, they should have been in there. But Brother Bill, if you have any thoughts on the FSU Georgia game, any takeaways from it?
Yeah, I was disappointed because from a fan standpoint, from the network standpoint, from the advertisers and sponsors for all that money, that was not a good product to put out there for a playoff game. And so for the players to opt out, if I'm a sponsor, I'm like, well, sure, I'll sponsor you, but I want to know that all your starting players are actually going to play. Because if I'm paying for this, if I'm spending my advertising dollars, I don't want that kind of a product out there. I mean, it was an awful game to watch, unless you're a Georgia fan. I mean, it was just not entertaining at all to see a team get boat raced like that. That's not good for football. And so I don't know if teams have the option, or if they should let teams declare, who's going to play even before they choose the seeding for the playoff. Because to me, that's almost like in the NBA what we see with players, with teams, sitting players throughout the season. That's not a good product to put out there for the fans. So that's my takeaway from the game. It just wasn't a good product to put out there.
Deacon Hill.
Yeah, it wasn't a good product, but that what you're saying, Bill. Hindsight is 2020. You can't, now it's easy to say that they should ask, the advertisers could ask who's playing, but the whole thing is, and the take that I heard today is, you got to blame it on the institution. You got to blame it on Florida State. That the staff, the coaching, or the president for letting it happen like that. They should have held their players more accountable for what happened. Because all they did was pout. They just pouted. They didn't show up. So I don't take no stock out of the game, because Georgia they were angry because they got beat by Alabama. So they were going to go out there and put their A game on. And then you got another team that's pouting because they got left out and half their players are sitting out. So what do you expect? You got second string players playing against the two-time defending national champs. So you're going to get that score like that. But it's more on the institution, the coaching for now. If you got legitimate injuries or something like that, you got to have some type of pride in your organization. Hey, we're going to go out here, we're going to play anyway, and so that's where I put it at, on the coaching and the institution for letting that happen, for not holding his players accountable. Like one guy was saying, these players, they were talking about the transfer portal and things like that, where they shouldn't let any players transfer until after all the bowl games and all of that stuff, because you started this season out with these teams, you're supposed to finish them with. Why are you just opting out and doing all this stuff now? So yeah, they got a lot of changes that need to be made, with the institution and with the rules and stuff like that.
Yeah, the transfer portal thing is insane to me, that you could allow that before the season's over, because you have dudes that were playing on the field for a team, they're in the transfer portal, like they're leaving. Like what I don't. NCAA is just completely like taking something that could work and makes college football more exciting, because teams can jump up and be better really, really fast. That's one thing they have to adjust. And I completely agree with you on FSU. That's, if I'm a player, how can I look at what FSU did and how they responded to not getting in the top 4 and be like, you know what? That's the program I want to be a part of. That's the guy. That's just all that says to me is loser. You didn't. I mean, you should have been like, at least play hard. You could still get killed by Georgia. They're a fantastic team. You're not that great of a team, but man, have some pride, anything. Which is the whole thing was so.
Well, like I said, you got to have your players out there though. You can't expect these second string players and stuff like that to come out. They can have all the pride they want. They ain't going to get it done. That's why they're second string.
Agreed, but you can see players playing with. You can see even sucky players playing with pride and playing hard. I mean, it just the whole everything was just bleh, the whole game.
That's like run your varsity out against your JV out against your varsity and tell your
That's
JV,
what they
play
did.
with pride and see what what happens. You can play with pride for about 3 snaps.
And then you're like, this sucks. I want to go back to playing JV. Okay, so jump into pros to wrap up here tonight. Pretty much the playoff seeding is kind of all kind of dialed in. We know who the ones and what the one seed is for both. There could be some fluctuation with 2s and 3s. The Bills, to me, I think have the biggest jump. They either make the playoffs and could be the 2 seed, or they could completely miss the playoffs, which would be wild to not have them in the playoffs at all. But for me, and because because you know who the 1 seed are, you know that they're going to get a bye week. So the Niners and the Ravens have a bye week. So these next games don't matter at all. So the question is rest versus rust. And I feel like the type of team that the Niners are and the type of team that the Ravens are, I don't know if the rest would be equal for both teams. So I want to know your thoughts on if you're the Ravens and the Niners, do you rest your players knowing that you get the week off, or do you play them in this final game and then give them the week off? Deacon Hill, I'll start with you.
That's a good scenario, a situation to be in, because you earn that spot to be there. But this is not my original idea, but I heard a commentator talking today about the Ravens. They're so locked in. They've been bum rushing everybody for the last couple of weeks or whatever. So they're locked in. They don't need more repetition or anything like that. So, but my only thing is if you got some injuries like the Niners, you got players that are injured or stuff like that, I would definitely rest those guys. But even if I'm the Ravens, I would treat it almost like how you do in the preseason, how you just play your starters for a little bit, just give them a little bit of time, and then get them out of there. So you don't try to you try to keep them at least up to game speed a little bit. But they're so locked in, they know what they're doing. They're rest is good if you're locked in like that and ready to go. It would depend on the injuries, and then maybe I would just give them a couple of snaps.
Brother Bill.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, typically for teams, the number one priority is to go into the playoffs as healthy as you can, because they say it's all about availability. And so Christian McCaffrey, he has a mild calf strain. He won't play, which I didn't expect him to anyways, as soon as I saw that he was taken out in the third quarter of the last game. But I would say they let their number ones go for a few series, maybe the first quarter. And then you want to have your backups in for 2 reasons, not just so that you don't run the risk of injury to your ones, but to give your 2s some snaps as well, reps as well. Because for the 49ers, they're going to be playing a team in the Rams who, although the Rams are in the playoffs, that's a team that they could see again in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting for that game to see for both teams what players they put out there. For the Ravens, I can remember early in the season where a lot of the press was about Miami and Kansas City's advantage. Hampton. We said early in the season, watch out for the Ravens. And here we are. They got, the best record in the league with losing their number 1 running back. So I think for the Ravens, rest, I don't think will hurt them. I don't see rust being a concern for them, because they've been a locked in, well-coached, well-executed team the whole season. And even for the teams that they lost against, they lost to Cleveland. Their losses were against physical teams. So I expect them to be clicking come playoff time, even with the extra week off.
Yeah. So I see the 2 teams a little different. The Niners, I feel like the Niners are the same team every single week. And we may win or lose or whatever, but for the most part, we play. I mean, if we throw 4 picks or whatever, we could play. Everything else could be great, but you throw 4 picks, things aren't going well. But to me, on offense, we're very consistent. And to me, right now, the Ravens, something has clicked in the last couple of weeks with the Ravens, where they're on like another level offensively, like the blocking with the movement of Lamar, with the movement of the wide receivers. And to me, as much as I don't want injury, because I think this is the first year Lamar hasn't been injured, which is a big deal considering he just signed that fat contract. But so Lamar has shown to be injury prone, nothing major, but like enough to keep him out for a couple of weeks. But they are so dialed in on offense, like almost on like an unstoppable level on offense, that I don't know if I would want to mess that up. I mean, I 100% agree that they should get some time. Like if you're gonna rest, okay, but you should do like 1 or 2 series and stuff just to kind of keep it going. But they're doing, it's almost like the way the Cowboys offense was running a few weeks ago, and it's like this isn't the Cowboys. Like this is not the Cowboys. Like them throwing all over the place and 400 yards and all this stuff, and then something got figured out, and then they kind of came back to earth. To me, the Ravens are kind of in that realm right now where they are just on like another level, and teams have not figured it out at all. Even Vic Fangio, one of the best, they murdered the Dolphins last week. I don't know if I would mess with that.
And look, that's the difference. What you said about the Cowboys. The Cowboys, you seen the schedule who they were beating when they were running like that. Baltimore, Baltimore is beating some. They beat the Niners. They just beat the brakes off the Dolphins. So yeah, that's a different animal.
I just don't know if I would. I would be so afraid that it's almost like to me the Ravens are like, it's like a 5-tier wedding cake, and you have these dudes carrying the cake out, and it's like just everything is just perfect. Like you don't want to. I wouldn't want to mess up anything because they're just, and I don't, because if you take 2 weeks off, you come back in, people have watched the tape for 2 weeks. People are playing you for the second time. I don't know, man. If it were me, I would rest because that's the smart thing to do, because health is the biggest thing in the playoffs. But man, I would be really worried that whatever's gelling right now, the way it's gelling, because it's such on like a freak level, that it wouldn't come back the first round.
I kind of look at this the same way you did when there was a bye in the regular season, right? I mean, the teams, it's always interesting for me to see the teams when they come out of a bye, how they execute. And I've seen some teams where they just fall flat on their face. And I shake my head, what did you guys do for that extra week? I mean, they come out and they play a team that didn't have a bye, and you have the extra bye, and you think you'd have the extra time to prepare because you know who your opponent's going to be when you come off the bye. And I've seen some teams, they just get annihilated, even with the extra week of rest. I don't see that with either team. And I think for the Ravens, what we're seeing is something we typically don't see out of a Ravens team. And they're putting up points in the 40s and 50s, and that's typically been uncharacteristic of the Ravens team because the way they're built. They've typically been more of a kind of a run first team, smash mouth. And even when they had, Joe Flacco, they just weren't known for putting up a lot of points. So I think this is whoever they play in that divisional round, unless it's Cleveland, I can't see the Ravens losing that first game, because that's usually when you would see the rust, is that divisional game.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Absolutely.
I don't expect either team to be rusty. They worked so hard to get this bye for a reason.
And like you said, Bill, that they're so close to the prize now. That bye in the middle of the season, that the light of the tunnel is a long way away, so you can get turned around or whatever. But now they're so close. I just think rest and just being healthy is the key, coming in just on running on all cylinders. With those fresh legs go a long way. So I if I can get it, I'd take it.
Yeah, and I see with the AFC and NFC, except for the Browns and the AFC, if it's not Ravens Niners Super Bowl, either there's a major disappointment because of injury or something went drastically wrong, because there's no reason why these two teams, the way that they're kind of playing, should not be in the Super Bowl.
Well, I would say, to be fair, to be objective, I think the Niners have stiffer competition when they're playoff seeding than the Ravens do. I look at the teams that, defensively can give the Ravens the biggest problem. And the only team I could see defensively would be the Cleveland Browns. The question is, does Cleveland have enough offense? Because you know what you're going to get with the Ravens defense. And so for a Cleveland team to go to Baltimore, I mean, like, if the Ravens can't take care of Cleveland at home, then I guess.
Flacco in Baltimore?
What's that?
Said no quarterback is more comfortable than Flacco in Baltimore.
Yeah, that would be the interesting matchup if that happens.
I
There was even talk on First Take this morning about possibly, question was who could possibly threaten, the Ravens in the AFC. The first team that the people agreed on was Cleveland. The other team was the Pittsburgh Steelers. I
Stop
said,
it.
no.
Stop it.
Even Stephen A. put his head down on that
He
one.
sure did. He sure did. He said, I just don't see wishful thinking. Not going to happen. In the
Not at all.
NFC, yeah, I mean, the Niners, I mean, there could be, pick any of those four teams between Dallas, the Rams, Philadelphia, or
Count Detroit out.
Or Detroit, right? Who, if the Niners aren't on their A game, could give them problems.
The only team that would concern me is the Rams, just because they know us so well. All those other teams on the road, forget it. But the Rams know us really, really well.
Yep.
But I don't know. I'm pumped. So we'll have the league wrapped up this year. We have about a minute left. We'll have the league wrapped up this year. We'll know all the playoff seeding and games. Next week we'll talk about that first round of the playoffs, and we will discuss the national championship. Hopefully it's the Huskies raising that trophy for the first time since 1990, if I'm right, 1990, 91, around there. I know
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Yeah, they said neither team has won the championship in this century. I'm like, it's only been 22 years. I mean,
Yeah.
they say it like that.
Sounds dramatic though.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys very much. I will see you next week.
All righty.
Right. See ya.